when you're going through a divorce as a parent. What are the top 3 things you need to keep in mind?
There's really no great way for this to work. When one parent goes after the other parent, it hurts the kid. When you're getting divorced, it is wildly overwhelming. I mean, it just wrecks the parents often. It's such a hard moment in family life.
So what's an ideal situation?
There's one dreamy scenario that can almost never be pulled off.
Tell me. All right, December. We are here.
Yes, and I will tell you one thing, I think you know this, years ago, I knit for both of my girls' advent calendars, where I put a little treat in there every day, and I love it, but it's also very good when it's finally filled, because coming up with, like, 24 not garbage gifts that fit into tiny little mittens and hats.
I love that. So it's an advent calendar that you knit,
Yep,
and then they open it up every day. There's some sort of
every day, and it's like a garland, and it's little mittens and little hats, and I made one for each of them, and I'm never making another one again. It was such a
That's
project.
impressive. I can't even sew a button.
Well, knitting is something I do like to do, but I'm never making one of these again.
But, this is what I love, traditions around the holidays of what people and kids look forward to doing, right?
I love getting them out, and a lot of chapstick, towards the end, some earrings. It's hard because you don't wanna just give them junk.
So do you lead up to a high value gift?
Like, nicer little, like,
Yeah.
low-value jewelry.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna be thinking for you of what to fill those
Yes,
with.
no, if you ever
Yeah.
see any, like, cool little things when you're out and
Yeah.
about, like, grab them for
Okay.
me.
What do you do in families where you are blended or divorced and you're trying to figure out the holidays? So we got this great letter I want to dive right into talking about sort of post-divorce visitation. How does that work, right? The holidays also big time.
Dear Dr. Lisa and Reena, we recently got divorced and our 12-year-old daughter is definitely struggling with split custody. She lives with me 1 week and him 1 week. We live just 2 miles away from each other to be in the same school district and to be close to her friends. We've tried to make it more positive by saying you have 2 homes, 2 bedrooms to decorate and enjoy. But she says, I barely feel settled in when I get here and 2 days later, it's time to go again. It's just too much. We've opened the conversation up with her to ask her to suggest what she'd like to do. She has suggested an every 2-week switch, and maybe we'll try it. My ex and I are both quite flexible. When she's with one parent, we're still okay with her hanging out with the other, or whoever she wants to for a few hours. We're really trying our best to make this as comfortable as possible for her since she already has middle school, puberty, and all of that to deal with. She often says, oh, just 6 more years of this and I'll be out of here anyway. That really breaks my heart because of how true and sad this is. What else can we do here? Thank you.
Is this sort of a common arrangement with divorce?
Well, it is, the 1 week at each house, and what I'll say about this letter out of the gate, like, this is in many ways an excellent divorce scenario. Like,
Right.
clearly these exes are working together, clearly trying to set up family life so that she's, near her friends, their homes are not too far apart. This kid saying, "What if I can stay 2 weeks at one house and then 2 weeks at the other house?" And it sounds like, this woman and her ex are both, like, open to that. They're also open to, when it's mom's week,
Yeah.
spending time over at dad's, which is great. So, there's a lot here that, like, you don't always see in these divorce situations. Like, there's sometimes a lot more heat and a lot more discord. Actually, not just sometimes, like, often. In the kind of, like, big picture of this is a pretty good deal, right? I mean, this and it's interesting, it's one child, so that, like, sometimes when there's more than one kid, this gets more complicated. There's a lot that structurally makes this more workable than a lot of situations. So I think we wanna talk sort of just acknowledge that out of the gate.
I'm thinking for myself, if I had to move 1 week and then move all my stuff, I just think about going on a business trip, how disruptive that is in your lives. I'd never thought of it from a teen's perspective or tweens.
It's not that great.
Yeah.
And actually where this kid is coming from, most kids, and this is what I've heard, is that, like, 1 week at each house, like, I've often thought about this, and sometimes when I've done divorce work with families, it's a little bit like if you were 1 week in LA and 1 week in New York. That is really hard, and I really appreciate, like, this kid is, like, she's complaining, like, I've heard kids refer to this as feeling like a human ping pong ball, which is not a great
Yeah.
way to feel, and there's so much empathy in this letter where she's also like, "And this kid's in puberty, and this kid's in
Yeah.
middle school, and
Yeah.
she's trucking herself back and forth." It's not that great. Hey, friends. We know that finding reliable guidance on raising kids is not easy to do. That's why the Ask Lisa podcast is free. We want everyone to have access to tested, trustworthy advice. If you want to help us reach more families, you can. All you have to do is click like, hit subscribe, and leave a thought or question in the comments. Every interaction on this channel helps more families find us. Okay, now let's get back to it.
So what's an ideal situation? Is there a good one?
There's one dreamy scenario that can almost never be pulled off.
Tell me.
As soon as I start to describe it, you'll see why this mostly does not work. It requires a lot of resources. But the ideal situation, honestly, is that there are 3 homes. There is the home where the kid lives all the time, and that each parent has their own apartment, and the parents are the ones who come and go. Like from the kid's perspective. So the mom moves in 1 week, goes back to her place. The dad moves in 1 week, goes back to his place. In, like, the dreamiest of all dreamy scenarios, and this almost never happens, there's actually 1 apartment and the exes share it. Okay, this is enormously rare. I have seen it done, but if you look at this straight up from the kid's perspective, that's the ideal.
That's the best. Because why? Because there's consistency,
The kid
same
never
space.
moves.
Can I tell you, if I was divorced from my husband, I wouldn't wanna see him in the same,
Well,
right?
exactly.
Like,
I mean, like
sharing space?
exactly, like that, and, often what they do is they keep the family home that they had,
Yeah.
and then the parents are moving in and out. You can see why I say, like, this
Yeah.
almost never happens, but I just want it out there in the world, like, if you look at it straight up from the perspective of the kid, and this is somehow a viable option,
Yeah.
that's the best one for the kids.
What do you think when parents are going through a divorce, what is it that they might not realize that really affects the kid that they should know?
So hard, Rena. It's so hard on the kid, and it's interesting. Of course, like, it's so much better when the family gets along, right? And it's clear that these exes work well together. I will take that any day over hostility or conflict, and definitely over open conflict. Open conflict is where the damage gets done. We have always known that. Like, if exes are fighting in front of the kids, that is where we're going to see psychological harm. If we're going to see it from anything, we're going to see it from that. Sometimes, Serena, it's interesting. When the parents can work so well together, kids are like, "Why do you guys have to get divorced?" As much as I don't like the discord,
Mm.
at least our kids are at least like, "Okay, I get it. Like, you guys
Mm.
can't get along."
Mhm.
But every once in a while in these situations, the good working relationship between the exes does lead to kids being like, "Why do I have to move all the time? You guys couldn't get along. Like, why do you have to do
Mm.
this?"
So I've never thought of it from the child's perspective, like the human ping pong, that when you said that, that really hit.
When I say, like, there's really no great way for this to work, right? Somebody is gonna have to do quite a bit of adjusting one way or another. Even, like, my super ideal scenario, okay, well, now the parents are both moving every other week, right? Like, that is not fun for them. I think the thing, though, that is really important, and this is so hard to do if you're the adult in this, but I'm just gonna ask a lot of adults in this because 'cause we're asking a lot of kids in this.
Yeah.
When parents divorce, they're putting what works really well for them ahead of what might work really well for their kid.
Whoa.
I know. And it's not always that way, right? It's not always that way because sometimes there are really unhappy or even dangerous relationships or actually
Right.
breaking up,
Or for your own mental health when you know you need to get out.
and for probably even sometimes the kids, like, ending that relationship is the best thing. But in a situation like this, I think often the kid's feeling is, "You guys are doing what works for you.
Mhm.
It doesn't work for me." Now, of course, they're adults, they get to, but one of the things that can then soften this a little bit for the kid is to acknowledge that, right? To say, "We do get along, but we don't wanna be married anymore, but we get it.
Hmm.
We are doing what works for us ahead of what's gonna work well for you."
If you can't do this ideal situation of sharing a home,
Which
which
is like
you've laid out, you know
0.1%.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
1% of 1%,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, and you're switching between homes, is it better to do 2 weeks at a time than 1 week?
It's a really good question, right? Like, how would you feel if your kid were somewhere else for 2 weeks every other 2 weeks?
Well, now that you've reframed it for me, that I've put my emotions and my needs ahead of my kids maybe in this divorce possibly, I would think maybe this is my compromise where I needed to get out of this marriage. I needed to do this for me and also for my kids, probably, they might not realize it. But maybe if there is an arrangement that is better for their mental health and their development, I would be interested to hear that.
I think that's a good way to think about it, right? Like, okay, We're asking this of you every other week, LA, New York
Mhm, mhm.
probably does feel different than 2 weeks in LA and 2 weeks in New York. And what I also like in this letter is they're like, "We can try it."
Yeah.
Right? And then that's like, again, Rena, I mean, a lot of these arrangements, like lawyers have to get involved, stuff has to get rewritten, and so that this family's in a situation where they're like, "You know what? Let's give it a spin and let's see how it works." Like, that's actually pretty good news. I think what I would want, though, is in addition to trying it, maybe something that really formalizes, but you're always gonna have Tuesday night at the other parent's house, you're always gonna have and sometimes that you can throw in a weekend in there, right, where the kid maybe say that they're at the dad's house for 2 weeks in a row, but the in between weekends with mom, these can become very elaborated
Yeah,
schedules.
and they say even in this letter that we're open to them still hanging out,
Yeah.
together, the other parent, if there's something that comes up.
I think it's, like, also, like, kinda in the spirit of, like, trying to meet this kid halfway. And I'm not surprised, and I totally get it where the parent's like, "Isn't this great? Like, you can decorate 2
Yeah,
bedrooms." And
yeah.
the kid's like, "No." The kid's like, "I am watching the clock until I can have 1 lousy dorm room." I don't know, there's just so much love in this, like, where the parents are trying to make it better, trying to say like, "Oh, it's great, it's gonna be great."
Right.
And the kid's able to be honest, and the kid's like, "No, this is not what I want."
What are the options you should think about that could really help in the development of a child when you're going through divorce?
So, number 1, and always number 1 is, clearly you do not get along with that person like you used to. Deal with that on your own time. Like, that is the number 1 thing. Like, whatever the disagreements are, whatever the discord is, deal with it separately. The way we wanna think about it is that kids love both of their parents, and when one parent goes after the other parent, it hurts the kid. It hurts the part of the kid that loves that parent. Keep conflict to a minimum. I think the other thing that's really, really key is it sounds sort of small, but it's actually not small, like, reduce logistical hassles as much as absolutely possible. So, if a kid needs to move this much, try to have a full setup at both homes. That they don't have to pack clothes. I mean, of course, this is expensive, right? Having 2 sets of clothes or whatever. But the more it can be not like you're staying in a hotel in LA and a hotel in New York, right? The more that it's like you're in your home in LA and your home in New York, the more that you can make that the scenario. Because the other thing is like middle school, like she's trying to remember her homework, where it is, how it gets done. Like, so the more there can be just sort of like an automatic like clicking into the space, that can help a lot.
And, obviously not having conflict in front of kids, you've said this over and over again, but what else can parents do to make this a smoother transition?
Being transparent about, like, here's the plans, here's where we are, taking input where you can, as this letter does, being really empathic about how the kid feels about the divorce. It's interesting, Rena, when I think about, like, my training, and I did a lot of training around divorce, I remember my supervisor saying, like, "We can divide everything into, like, things that can be solved with a logistical shift and things that can be solved with empathy." So, like, sometimes the kid's like, "I keep forgetting my toothbrush." Okay, this is easy, right? Like,
Yeah,
buy more
yeah,
toothbrushes.
yeah.
That's a logistical shift. Whereas the kid is like, "I really miss being able to walk to that friend's house when I'm
Mm,
at your
mhm.
house." That's where the solution has to be saying, "Of course you do, and I get it, and I'm sorry." And you can, like, go further. You can say, "We really get it. This divorce is working better for us than being married, but it's not working for you, and we know that you're the one who's having to absorb this, and we're sorry." Kids, like, they'd rather have a real solution, but if that cannot be possible, and it is often not possible, just kindness,
Yeah,
empathy,
yeah.
owning it goes really
Kindness,
far.
empathy, and owning it. I have to tell you, there's one part in this letter that really hurt my heart. It was when the kid said, 6 more years like this, and then I'm out. I have only 6 more years. It kinda breaks my heart as a parent to see they're counting it down and being vocal about it.
Yeah.
How should the parents respond to that?
So, one thing that has always been fascinating to me, when you're getting divorced, it is, like, wildly overwhelming. I mean, it just wrecks the parents often, even if they want it. It's such a hard moment in family life. I mean, the parents really are usually more banged up than they've ever been emotionally.
Mhm.
So they're figuring out the visitation, they're figuring out the logistics of it, and, they're figuring out she was, maybe 11 when they figured it out, and you come up with the plan you come up with. But one thing I've really seen over time is, by the time a kid is 14, 15, 16, the plan that made a ton of sense when they were 11 or 12 may not always be the plan. And sometimes it's like who's closer to the high school because the kid's playing sports. Again, this takes money. Often kids start driving.
That's right.
I have seen it successfully happen where the kid starts being like, "Tuesday, I'll be here. Wednesday, I'll"
Come
like,
up with their own plan.
they come up with their own plan, and they've got their car, and they're getting themselves back and forth, and I think you know this too, like, when you have an 11-year-old, it's very hard to picture the 16 or 17-year-old version of that kid and, like, the kinds of things they're gonna wanna be able to do. The ideal situations I've seen are where the parents get along well enough that they don't feel like turfy or possessive of the kid's time, right? And as the kid ages, what this means is that they can allow whatever it is that becomes possible. Like in the same way that I think about as our kids get older, things change. Like I've always traveled. Now when I travel, like I just leave. Whereas when my kids were little, it was like this whole to do. Like, how am I going to get a babysitter here at 7:30 in the morning and make this work? All that stuff. And as our kids age, things change really fast. And suddenly you have a 17-year-old and the situation looks different. Because it is heartbreaking to think like that this kid is like counting down until
Yeah.
they can leave their family homes, right? I mean, like that's just not what we want. But I think the response in that moment may be to say, "We're gonna keep working with you.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep working with you, and this is the plan we have now, and we're gonna figure out a way to get you access to a car." And then weirdly, I mean, kids will sometimes leave a bunch of stuff in their car, right, and truck it around. But I think I would say to this kid, "I hear you," right? There's gonna be some disruption for the duration that you're, not
Mhm.
still living under
Mhm.
our roofs, but it won't always feel this way. You're gonna start to have more and more autonomy as you go.
Mm. There's so much to think about here, but, before we go, Lisa, I'm just it's so hard, and I love being at sporting events and now seeing parents who years ago might have had an acrimonious divorce or and
Mm.
and really working together, like,
Yeah.
I remember one parent brought another parent their favorite coffee, and I just thought, "Oh my god, I just love that they're making it work for they have a great kid." So, what's your advice when you are struggling emotionally? You know you need to do this, your kids are involved. What are, like, the top 3 things you need to keep in mind when you're going through a divorce as a parent? When you're overwhelmed, but you really truly want what's best for your kid, and you might not be thinking about certain things.
I'm actually just gonna give you the top one.
Oh,
There's a one.
just one. Okay.
There's a one. I mean, well, we've got, like, the basics of, like, don't fight openly in front of the kid, and don't trash your ex,
Yeah.
whether the kid's not there or not. So that's 1 and 2. And then 3 is you are no longer married or partnered. You are co-parents still. This person used to be my husband or wife or partner. This person is now my co-parent. And using that terminology to just force yourself to shift into a new way of thinking about who that person is in your life, right? Which again, like, when I think about the work I've done with divorcing families, like you are wrecked often. And so all you're thinking about is the loss of this relationship. Nobody gets married with the plan of getting divorced, right? That's nobody's plan. When you're divorced, you're managing all this grief, either about the loss of the relationship or at least your hopes for the relationship. And so I think in that point, it's very hard not to be seeing that person as like my ex-husband, my ex-wife, my ex-partner. And I think that the more you can be like my co-parent, the more that we can think of ourselves as coaches on a team. And who's on the team? Our kids are on the team. We want them to succeed, and we are here to try to make that happen. And we're going to set everything else aside to be there for them and to support the players we've got.
Can I tell you, I don't think I could do the share the house thing because, like, I don't wanna find some other woman's makeup bag,
Well, that's where it gets weird,
right?
right? I mean,
Or
it can get really weird
toothbrush.
really
I
fast,
can't do
right?
that, Lisa.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
No, I mean, it's like when I say like 1% of 1%,
I understand why it
but
would
like,
work
it
for a
gets weird.
kid.
And even that one, right? Like, you can do that forever.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah.
I think people hope to find love again, right? I mean, like, it's not an ongoing, usually successful thing to do, but it is an option.
It
It
is.
is an option.
Well, I love it. You've had us look at it from a kid's perspective and a tween especially going through so much. What do you have for us for parenting to go?
So one thing I have seen help is if there's a pet that goes with the kid.
To both houses.
Yeah, moves back and
You've
forth
seen a
with the kid.
difference with this?
Kids sometimes, if they feel like they're getting shuttled, and especially an only child, but sometimes or kids with a sibling who's bugging them at the time. I have seen that if also the cat goes back and forth when the kid goes back and forth, the kid doesn't feel so alone in it. They're like, "You and me, kitty, it's time to go over to the other house." So, if you don't already have a pet and don't want a pet, I'm not saying go get a pet to do this, but I will say, as you're thinking about divorce schedules, if the kid is really attached to the pet, It's something to consider.
That is really interesting to hear you say. I will warn everybody who does not have a dog, it is like having another child.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
but boy, that when you're talking about compromise and things to make them feel more adjusted,
Yeah,
what a great
pets can
idea.
go a long way. Pets
What
can go a
a
long
great
way.
idea. Well, thank you, Lisa. It is the holidays, but I don't you feel like sometimes I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but sometimes the holidays things get derailed in family life.
They do, and we just have to try to enjoy it anyway and look forward to the routines clicking back in January.
Okay, you love your
I
routines,
love them.
and you've helped me understand why they're good. I'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week.